In this session, we are going to discuss about the human eye, the anatomical structure of the human eye, and this is the second part of the session. The first part has already been uploaded and it is containing the discussion or the explanation till the second layer of the eyeball. Now in the part 2, we are going to discuss about the third layer or the innermost layer of the eyeball and the associated structures in the retina. So this is the eye anatomy which we are taking into consideration while discussing all these structures. Now we come to the innermost layer of the eyeball, that is the retina. Retina is the outer, it consists of two layers. One outer pigmented layer of epithelial cells attached with the inner surface of choroid, and the next is the inner layer of nerve cells and fibers containing photoreceptors, rods and cones. So retina mainly consists of two layers, the outer pigmented layer and the inner nervous cell layer. The outer pigmented layer consists of the epithelial cells that are attached with the layer of choroid. Choroid is the second layer of the eyeball. And the inner layer of the retina consists of nerve cell and photoreceptors. Photoreceptors means the cells which are photosensitive or which are able to sense the light. There are two types of photoreceptors in the eye. One is rod and the other one is cones. Rod cells activate when the light is dim or when in the dark or when we are in dim light, and cones are responsible for the vision in bright light. So this is the structure of the retina. If you see here, this white structure is sclera, the outermost layer, the orange structure is choroid, the middle layer, and this yellow portion is retina. This is the innermost layer of the eyeball. The retina consists of the two layers. One is the retinal pigment epithelium. This layer is the retinal pigment epithelium or the epithelial layer that is attached with the choroid. And then we have the photosensitive layer. This one is the photosensitive layer or the neural layer consisting of the nerve cells and the photoreceptors. Photoreceptors are cones and rods. And these are the ganglion cells or the bipolar cells which form the nervous layer of the retina. So this whole structure forms the nerve cell layer, and this epithelial layer forms the pigment epithelium layer that is attached with the choroid. Now we come on to the other structure in the eye, a very important structure, that is crystalline lens or the lens of the eye. The lens is a circular, biconvex, transparent body enclosed within a capsule. So the lens is actually circular and biconvex. Biconvex means the convex structure is there on both the sides of the lens, and it is a transparent body enclosed within a capsule. So there is a protective capsule around the lens, or a protective capsule is there inside which the lens or the crystals of the lens are enclosed. The lens lies behind the pupil. So in the second layer I had discussed about the iris and the pupil. So behind this pupil lies the lens. The lens is held by the suspensory ligaments. The lens helps in the formation of the image on the retina and has no blood supply but takes nutrition from the aqueous humor. So if you see in this structure, this light blue portion which you are able to see here is the lens, and if we magnify to see the lens, this is the lens, and this darker portion is the capsule inside which the crystalline lens is present. As the cornea was there, similar is the lens. They both are not having any kind of blood supply. That is why they are transparent in nature. There are two structures that are transparent in the eyeball. One is the cornea and the other one is the lens, because both are not having any kind of blood supply. So where are they getting their nutrition from? They are taking the nutrition or the oxygen that is required for their sustenance from the aqueous humor. Aqueous humor is the fluid that is present in the anterior segment of the eyeball. This we will be discussing further. Now we are seeing the anterior and the posterior segments. So just now I told you that the lens is getting its nutrients from the aqueous humor that is present in the anterior segment. So what actually is this anterior and posterior segment? So if you see in this diagram, it becomes very clear. Here is the lens, and this lens is dividing this whole eyeball into two portions. One is in front of the lens and the other portion is behind the lens. So the portion in front of the lens, from the lens to the cornea, forms the anterior segment, and the portion from the lens to the retina forms the posterior segment. So the lens is actually dividing the whole eyeball into two segments, anterior segment and posterior segment. Anterior means in front, so the portion in front of the lens is anterior segment, and the portion in the back of the lens is posterior segment. Now the anterior and posterior chambers. See, there might be a confusion between segments and chambers, so you need to keep this in mind very carefully, that segments are formed by the division caused by lens, because the lens is dividing the structure. The structure formed by the division due to the lens are segments, and when the division is because of the iris, they are known as chambers. So iris divides the structure into two chambers, anterior chamber and the posterior chamber. So you can see here a green portion. This green portion in front of the lens is the iris. So the portion from the iris to the cornea is the anterior chamber, and the portion from the green area or the iris to the lens is the posterior chamber. So the iris is dividing the eye into anterior chamber, which consists of aqueous humor, and the posterior chamber also consists of the aqueous humor. So where is the aqueous humor lying? It is there in the anterior segment, and anterior chamber and posterior chamber both are the portions of anterior segment only. So the division that is formed by lens is known as segment, and the division that is formed by iris is known as chamber. Both the chambers are the part of anterior segment only. That is why the fluid present in them is aqueous humor, and the fluid present in the posterior chamber will be vitreous humor. We will be discussing about the aqueous and the vitreous humor in another session. So this is the division that is caused by the iris and the lens. See, if you feel any kind of confusion among the chamber and the segment, so what is my trick that I am sharing with you, that whenever we are looking at the eye, which is the main structure that we focus upon first, between the iris and the lens we are focusing first. So first of all, chamber is starting with C and segment is starting with S. So first of all, we are taking lens into consideration, and which one is greater, C or S? So S. So when we are focusing on the lens first, so it means that it is dividing the area into segment, S for segment, and then after the lens we will be seeing the iris, not before that. So the iris is dividing into chambers. So this is my trick. Form your own, or if this looks good, then do follow. Okay, so this was about the anterior and the posterior chambers of the eye. Then we come to the optic nerve. The nerve fibers from the retina converge to form the optic nerve and finally reach the brain. So the fibers from the nervous layer of the retina, they all converge to form a single nerve, and this nerve is the optic nerve, that is the second cranial nerve, to reach to the brain. The optic disc, the small area on the retina from where the optic nerve leaves the eye. So this is the optic nerve, and the point from where it is leaving the eye is known as optic disc. Optic disc, or it is also known as blind spot. Since this optic disc does not contain any photoreceptor, so there is no vision possible at that point. That is why this place or this point is also known as blind spot. So the point from where the optic nerve arises is known as the optic disc, and since there are no photoreceptors, neither rods nor cones, it means that there is no vision possible at that point. So when no vision is possible, that is why we are calling it as blind spot. Now the next structure on the retina is the macula lutea, the yellowish pigmented spot at the posterior pole of the eye, which marks the location of fovea centralis. So macula lutea, this word means yellow pigmented spot. So the yellow pigmented spot on the posterior portion of the eye is macula lutea, and its center is known as fovea centralis. At fovea centralis, only the cones are present, which are densely packed. See, in the blind spot, there was no photoreceptor present, but in the fovea centralis, only cones are present, rods are not present, and cones are responsible for bright light vision. That is why this is the point of greatest visual acuity, since the cones are present and are densely packed at fovea centralis. That is why fovea centralis is considered as the point of greatest visual acuity, or the greatest sharpness of vision is focused or is found at this point only. So this is the whole structure where you can see all the 4 points. This is the optic nerve. The point where it is leaving from is known as the optic disc or the blind spot. This yellow pigmented area is known as macula lutea, and the central aperture or the central portion of the macula lutea is known as fovea centralis. So this is about the third nervous tissue layer of the eyeball, that is the retina, and the associated structures with the retina. So this is about the anatomical structure of the eyeball or the human eye. In the next session, we are going to discuss about the characteristics of aqueous humor and the vitreous humor. Thank you.